I'm out at the range today to show you how you can bring some tools to the range that let you effectively do powder tests and seating depth tests, all without having to make multiple trips back to your house. Let's go have some fun. I'm F-Class John for Ultimate Reloader, and one of the questions I often get is, how can I load at the range to maximize my time without having to make trips back to the house and doing a powder test or a seating depth test? And so I'm going to show you a couple simple tools that you can bring that really let you do some effective load development. And I'm going to walk you through how I have them set up. First, let's start with the press. We're going to start with this. Now, this is my Summit press, and what I've done is I've simply mounted it to a 2x4, and it keeps it very portable, very mobile, and I just have a couple of quick clamps that I can throw on the back bench here, and it makes it a really solid unit. Now, I like using the 2x4 over something thinner like plywood because I countersink some heavier bolts. I can really get the press mounted correctly to a piece of wood without the risk of snapping through on, like 1/2 inch plywood or something. Now, if you have a thicker piece of plywood, maybe some 3/4 or 1 inch, that would also work. But I would just really recommend that you have enough so that the bolt has some bite on the bottom side so that when you tighten it down, you really can take advantage of any leverage that you need. Now, I like the Summit for portability. Yes, it's a little bit heavier, but it is a very compact press that can do everything you need of it. I can size at the range, I can seat at the range, I can decap, pretty much any step that I need to do, I can do with this press, but you could certainly do it with a rock chucker or something like that. It's just gonna be a little bit larger form factor. The other thing to keep in mind is that because of how the Summit press works, you can see that it is a top-down design. So the actual die is coming down onto the piece of brass, and that's just going to allow you to be right on top of the bench without having to worry about any hangover. And that's important because some particular situations might call for being on top of the bench where you don't really have the opportunity to have any hangover, and I kind of like that design. So for me, the Summit press is great. If you're only doing something like seating, you could also get a partner press. I wouldn't necessarily do a lot of heavy sizing on it, but I do think a partner press is fantastic for doing, maybe you want to do some mandrel testing or you want to do some seating testing or something like that. But the Summit press really, for me, it's the total package. So that's why I've chosen it. And then I also like the short handle on it. There is a longer handle, and admittedly, the long handle is great for giving a lot of additional pressure if you have really heavy sizing to do. But I have found for anything that I do, the short handle fits the bill, and it just helps with me when I want to carry it to the range. You'll also notice that I'm running the Matchmaster dies in here, and this is the seating die. Now, I brought prepped brass just because we're really going to focus on powder testing and seating depth testing, but if I was going to be doing any sizing, I also brought my other die with me, and I think that's an important thing to remember. Always bring a little extra, whether it's an extra die that you think you're not going to need, like you might say, hey, I don't really plan on doing any sizing, but it doesn't hurt to bring, a sizing die and maybe some extra primers, things that let you accomplish more at the range should you need the opportunity, because there's nothing worse than running to the range and then having to go all the way back home because of something simple. So I do have my sizing dies with me, and I do have a few extra components. I don't anticipate that I'm going to need more than the 90-ish rounds that I have here, but it is good to have the extras just in case. When it comes to a powder dispenser, we are going to be using the Chargemaster Link. It's small, it's light, it's inexpensive, and it just gets the job done. 1/10 of a grain accuracy, which is more than enough to get a good powder test done. And honestly, I've shot matches using this, and I have absolutely zero issue with it. I'm going to be using Hodgdon 4350, which is new to me in the 7P RCW. Now, when I shot 284, I did a ton of 4350. It was one of my primary powders that I went to, but I've actually never tried it in the PRCW. So we're gonna give it a go today, and I think that's gonna be a great test to show how I can develop a load very quickly with a powder that I have never actually used. A great feature of the Chargemaster Link is going to be this protective shield. It's a little breezy today, maybe not more than 2 or 3 miles an hour, but it's definitely coming through the range and it's kind of swirling about. and that's something that will definitely affect the accuracy of your powder charge. So in between each charge drop, we're going to be putting this little shield on, and that is definitely going to help make things more accurate. Something to keep in mind if you're going to be bringing items like this to the range is make sure you bring an extension cord or a power strip of some kind, because your range may not have power in a really accessible place. I tend to bring about a 30-foot extension cord because I never know where I'm going to need to plug in, and then I do have a power strip at the end because it's not uncommon for me to have to plug in a couple different things. If you're bringing something just like this, then you really just need an extension cord to plug into and you will be fine. There's a couple ways that we can approach this. Some people will do a seating depth test first, then do a powder test. Others will do the powder test and then a seating test. I tend to fall into the camp of doing the powder first and then a seating depth test. So that's what we're gonna do here. What I'm gonna do first is I'm gonna start just above kind of like a safe level with the 4350, and I'm definitely gonna stop before it gets too hot. I don't like shooting near max with any of my loads. If I'm gonna shoot a load, it's gonna be at where the target is telling me it's the best. Probably near a top load, but definitely not where it's screaming and causing any problems with my bolt face, my brass, or shortened life on the barrel. And that's something where with 4350, I know I'm going to be starting right around 52 grains, and I'm going to be working up to probably 54 or maybe just 54 and a half. And we're going to do a coarse powder test first. What is a coarse powder test? Well, a coarse powder test is going to be larger chunks between each charge. In this case, I want to do half grain increments. So I'm going to start at 52, then we'll go 52.5, 53, 53.5, 54, and then 54.5. And I'm going to be looking for where they're impacting on target. Very simple ladder test that we'll shoot twice, and I will explain how we look for the overlapping on that when we are done. What I need to do is make sure that my powder pan is empty. Now I've already gone through the trouble of calibrating this and getting it ready, and all we need to do at this point is load up. So first thing I want to do is I'm going to load 2 of every charge. Like I said, I'm going to start at 52, so we're going to punch in 52 here, and we're going to go ahead and hit go, and I'll be putting them over here. And because I'm at the range, I'm not as worried about capping them off with a bullet. You can see that I just have a box of brass right here, and I'm going to fill these up, and I will go ahead and do them in increasing charges. And we're going to use the Matchmaster seating die with its built-in, it holds the bullet for each seating one, so we're going to do it that way. So here we go. We've got our first 52. We're going to do another 52 here, and we're just going to work our way through the powder charges and get the rounds ready to shoot here. And there we go. That is 52 all the way up to 54.5 in half grain increments. Now we need to take these over and seat the bullets. Now you might be saying, if you're not doing a seating depth test, how are you going to know where you want your bullets seated? Well, it's simple. I start 5 thousandths off of jam. Some people start maybe 5 thousandths off of touch. Just find a spot where you consistently find yourself starting, so that no matter what barrel you're on, you can always do the same thing. For me, that's 5 thousandths off of jam. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my first round. I'm going to throw it in here. Now I've already got this set because I've used it before, and this is going to be, I've moved it back so that it's 5 thousandths off of jam for me right now. And we're going to drop a bullet in, and then you can see that it seats. Now obviously we want to make sure by measuring, and so there we go, 2.3495, which is 5 thousandths off of my jam point, and so I'm good with that. Now keep in mind, since I've loaded these up at 5 thousandths off of jam, that could very well be where they shoot the best. I just don't know yet. I just know that I can do an effective powder test at 5 thousandths off of jam, and then from there I will do a seating depth test to see if we can tighten it up at all from that point. But now that I've got these, let's go shoot them and see what happens. Here we go. We're going to go ahead and do our 3 blow-offs, and then we're going to do our ladder test, and then we'll do it again. We're going to do it next to each other, so we'll move over 1 minute, and then we'll shoot it, and that'll give us a good side-by-side comparison. Now, we're going to be doing this at 300 yards. I do find that this is plenty effective to get a good workup, and to be honest, it's the only distance I have to shoot. So let's go ahead and see what we can do here. Again, keep in mind, these are just the 3 blow-offs. So now we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna shoot 1 of each powder charge, then move over 1 minute and shoot that same test again. So here we go. And we're doing this all at 1 single point of aim. And my point of aim down there is about 3/4 of an inch dot at 300 here. Okay, so that gives us a good starting point. It looks like I finished up just under 2,900, so I probably could have gone to 55 grains on this test, but I'm still gonna work within the range that we have. I'm just gonna let it cool down for a second, even though it's not really all that hot, and we will be right back to do the second half of this. We've given it a few minutes, so we're gonna go ahead and shoot the next test, and again, we're just moving over. I'm actually gonna move over. I've got a second aiming point that's, I don't know, 4 inches over or so. So I was aiming on the right side of the X-ring. We're gonna aim on the left side. It'll give us a good comparison here. What I'm looking at here is I am looking at it and I am saying that I think if we look at 7, 8, 9, and then 10, 1, 2, 3, 4. So I like between 3 and 4. I know that doesn't make sense when you look at this. And then 9 and 10. So we're gonna try loading a couple up there, and then we're also gonna go between 5 and 6. So we're gonna figure out what's between 3 and 4, and then between 5 and 6, and we're gonna throw a couple more down and see what happens. So what I've done is I've loaded up 3 rounds at 53.2 and then 3 rounds at 54.2, and that's gonna put me between what was numbers 3 and 4 and then 5 and 6. I like those areas because they, while it's hard to see, they sort of had some mimic on target. But the more important thing to realize is if you look at this target, you're gonna see that the first group I shot was 2.28 inches on a 2.5 grain variant. So that's still really good, especially for a powder I've never used before. So it shows me that it's a really stable powder in this cartridge. And then the second one was just over 2.08 inches. So 2/3 of a minute across 2.5 grains of powder charge. So very consistent between the two, 2.29, 2.08, even though the groups were a little bit tall on each other. That's still really good for 2.5 grains. So now we're gonna shoot, I'm gonna clear this out, and I'm gonna go ahead and shoot 1 set of charges here at 53.2, and we'll shoot those on the left. And that shot a little big, but that's why we're testing. And again, that's the great thing about having the equipment at the range. Now let's see what this does. Now this was 54.2. And you can see the difference there. So great point in testing. So we had the 53.2, which I thought might tighten up a little bit. It did shoot a little bit bigger. If we look at the group size here, it is 1.72 inches. And then if we look at this other one, we are looking at a group size of 0.71 inches on 3 shots. So, I mean, that's well under 1/3 of a minute, about a 1/4 of a minute, maybe a little bit less, 0.71 inches anyway. Super tight, basically 1/2 an inch on vertical for 3 shots. So that's where I'm gonna go ahead and load up probably a dozen rounds now, maybe 15 rounds. And we're gonna do a seating depth test, and I'll show you how I do that over here. Here's what we got going on. We have 15 charged cases. We're gonna go ahead and do a seating depth test. Now I know obviously this is set for where we started, which is going to be 5 thousandths off jam. So I'm gonna go ahead and load one there, and that's just gonna be our jumping off point. And all I'm going to do is move the micrometer in 5/1000ths each time. Now, if you have trouble seeing, maybe the lighting's bad, a good little trick that I use is I take a bullet and I just hold it at a number I can read, and then I'm just going to turn it, and we're going to go 5/1000ths. And that's going to get us really, really close. I mean, at least for the purposes of doing our seating depth test. And now this one should be, see right there, 5/1000ths less, 2, 3, 4, 5.5, but close enough. And now we're going to go ahead and do the same thing. We're just going to keep moving on. Now in perfect world, this would be 50, 45, 40, 35. This one should be at 30. Let's see how close we are. 23,295. So we're right there. So the bullet trick works. So we are at 50. If we do 10 of them, then we should be all the way to 0, 0, which actually is probably where that'll be more than enough for me to see where we're at. So we're just going to do these 10. I'm going to go ahead and take them over, and we're going to fire them off. We're going to do the same thing. We're going to look for kind of overlapping, stacking. You know, it could just be one really nice group. I don't know. We'll see. So let's head over to the bench. Now we are going to do the seating depth test that we loaded over there. I will say conditions have definitely picked up. There is a fairly decent breeze coming in, but I think we're still going to get some good results here. And ultimately, our goal with this is to shoot it, get some kind of result, and then kind of dial it in just like we did with the powder charge. So let's see what we can do. What I like is the 5, 6, 7 area, the 5, 6, 7, 8 in particular, because if we look at it as a group like this, then we are looking at a seating depth where the overall group size was 1.5 inches. And so I think if we find the middle on that, then we're going to be able to really tighten that up. And what we might do is go ahead and load to the 5/1000ths off jam where I was, and we got some good results. And that'll be a good baseline against what we're going to try for a secondary, which, so it would be 5, so 5, 10, 15, 20, 25. So we want to come back 30/1000ths from jam as our follow-up test. So let me go load up a few more and we will see what happens. We are back here and I've loaded up 11 cartridges, 5 of one seating depth, 5 of 5 for another, and then an 11th. And you might be wondering, why did I do an 11th? Well, the 11th is just to check on the micrometer. Now, we said we wanted to come in 30/1000ths from our starting point. So we need to come out 20/1000ths. So I'm going to go ahead and hold this up and we're going to go 5, 10, 15, 20. And this 11th one is just so that I make sure we are at the right spot here. And it's just a little short, 17. And I'm going to put it over here so we don't screw that up. And then I'm going to go ahead and just come out a couple more. And now we should be good for loading up what should be 5.320. So we're going to come in just a hair. It's like 1.5. There we go. Okay, so now we're gonna load 5 like this. Now that we've done the 5 at 5.320, we need to come up 30 thousandths. So 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, okay? And now this should put us right in, oops. Right there, 2.350. So we are dead on moving it up 30 thousandths. So now we're gonna have a really good baseline between what we originally tested and what we think, or at least what I think, is where my seating depth is probably going to be just a little tighter. And there we go. So now we have the 5 that are at our 5 thousandths off jam, and then we have 30 thousandths or 35 thousandths off of jam over here. So let's head over to the range here and do this one more time. So we're back on the same target. You can see that we have the original test on the right, and now I'm gonna shoot these over on the left on 2 different aiming points. There we go. And this is going to be the 320. So that ain't too shabby. Now, yes, I have this weird flyer out there, but this is one of those tests where I'm just gonna say, look, I can feel pretty confident throwing out that flyer. Group size 0.69. Now, if you remember, 0.7 something, I think was our group size on this next one. So it may be that I just have a really, really wide window for my seating depth, but let's see what this does now. Okay, so that one was really nice as well. If we put a box around that. Now it's just a hair taller if we look at them. 1 inch versus 0.6 on the vertical. So that shot 17 up here definitely threw off that group size. Otherwise it would have been almost identical. So what do we take away from this? Well, if I had a little more time, I'd probably do a couple more seating depth tests. Really though, I think we're pretty much right in there. I'm more inclined to say that 2.320 setting, the one on the left here, is probably the setting that I would stick with because it had less vertical. It was tighter overall, even with that weird flyer. I suspect that's right where we're gonna wanna be. I might do a little bit of a fine powder test. You know, while I'm at the range, I could do 54.0, 54.2, and then 54.4. I could do 54, 54.2, and 54.5. I mean, I could do 1/10 of a grain. Like, that's the beauty of having everything at the range here, so that if I want to play around with it, if I want to just do some more validation, whatever it is that I need to do, I have the ability to do it. And that's really, I think, one of the big takeaways from loading at the range. Sure, you're bringing a little more gear, but look at the time that I have saved not having to drive home. I mean, I'm about an hour from my range, so that's almost 2 hours round trip. I've been able to do a powder test. I've been able to do a validation on my powder test. I've been able to do a seating depth and then do a couple different seating depth tests off that. And I could certainly do more if I was so inclined. So at the end of the day, don't be afraid to head to the range, do some of your powder charge and seating depth while you're there, and you might just get better results than you think, because you're doing it at the same time with the same gun in the same atmospherics. Everything is going to be repeatable at that point for you. With that, I hope that you're able to get something out of this that helps you the next time you're at the range. Have a good time when you are reloading, and we will talk soon. Have a good one.
I hope you enjoyed this video. If you're watching Ultimate Reloader on TV and want to take advantage of free resources, exclusives, and hot deals, just hold your camera phone up to the QR code, tap on the link, fill out the information, boom, you're getting Ultimate Reloader emails. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Also, we're on Facebook, YouTube, Rumble, where we've got unrestricted content, and Instagram. Make sure to follow us on all those channels. Ultimate Reloader also has a commercial solutions division serving law enforcement, the military, and the gun industry. We have some unique capabilities, including a comprehensive suite of recoil testing and evaluation capabilities, trigger profiling, and more. Thanks again for watching.